Look how long I waited to do the power rankings. All right. Anyways, so Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, all that other fun stuff for all you fine people on the internet. I look like Santa's seen some things. Anyways, so power rankings. It's Saturday night, and I'm not doing the puck board tonight. I'm taking it nice and easy. But you know, who's been naughty or nice? Merry Christmas, all that fun stuff, and I'm all Santed up and wearing my Canucks faux suit shirt. Anyways, so we're gonna start things off at number 32, and dropping one spot from last week to number 32 is Chicago. So the Blackhawks find themselves last on the power rankings at Christmas. And so next week will be on the eve of a new year. It'll be the last power rankings of 2023. Will they still be 32nd? It's entirely possible. That being said, they're going to enjoy their few days off, I would think. And Bedard scored a Michigan. So if you're a Hawks fan, you're probably pretty excited about that. It's probably not going to be the last one he scores in his career that way. Number 31, dropping 2 spots from last week, the San Jose Sharks. The Sharks are kind of back to being the Sharks. And I say kind of because there's still that effort. Tonight against the Canucks, you could see at certain points in the game they were working harder than the Canucks. And that I found a little bit scary, just a tiny bit. But yeah, San Jose's losing their share of games now. I know fans in San Jose were excited at the idea of maybe pulling themselves back into the playoff hunt, but they never really truly got back into the hunt. All right, number 30 on the board this week, moving up 2 spots from last week, is Anaheim. So Anaheim no longer last on the board, but they're not moving up that much. They've just basically passed Chicago and San Jose. They had some decent moments tonight against Seattle, but they just ultimately didn't have enough to get that tying goal and to get those points that you need to start getting if you're Anaheim. It's been a very frustrating season for them, and now it looks like they're going to be without Leo Carlsson for 4 to 6 weeks. So, yeah, Hockey Claus knows these things. Don't be surprised if the beard ends up in another video, because I'm telling you, this is one. It's a beard. It is. This is why I don't grow my beard out. People always say, why don't you grow it for November? Because it looks like this. All right, number 29, moving up 1 spot from last week, is Columbus. I went with the Cannon, because why not go with the Cannon? I tried to have some fun magnets for this. Some teams don't have a great fun magnet, though. But yeah, Columbus, they move up 1 spot. Obviously, they're towards the bottom of the standings. I think they have the firepower. I think it's on the back end they've had their issues. There's a good team here, though. And that's the thing for Columbus fans is the future, I think, looks pretty good with the right moves being made between now and the end of the season and then in the offseason. But as we hit the Christmas break, I don't think they're having visions of the 2024 playoffs at this point. Number 28, dropping 1 spot from last week, Buffalo. Very up and down week for Buffalo. Very, very, very up and down week for Buffalo. And so they stay in the bottom row. If they could have played every game like they played that game against Toronto, well, they're moving up. But they haven't. And it's just been kind of sort of very up and down. And tonight against the Rangers, they had a good game against the Rangers. They end up getting the 1 point instead of 2. But they're just so unpredictable from one night to the next. Number 27, dropping 1 spot from last week, the Ottawa Senators. They did get the win tonight. They blew another lead, which has become a standard thing for Ottawa. It has to be frustrating to see your team going into the third period, they have a lead, and in the back of your mind, you're dreading it. I remember those previous seasons with the Canucks, and it can be tough when your team's leading by 2 goals going into the third. And in your head, all you keep thinking is, okay, as long as the other team doesn't score early, and they did. So now it's a 1-goal lead, and they're sitting back. So, yeah, for Ottawa, maybe the Pittsburgh win tonight, maybe that ends up starting a run, but I don't know about that. I don't. Hockey Santa doesn't know. All right, number 26, moving up 2 spots from last week. So a little bit of movement for the Seattle Kraken. Not a lot of movement. There's some distance between themselves and you know, having a really good record and maybe making the playoffs. But the good news is it's the West where there's the opportunity there, right? The number 2 wildcard spot I think is pretty wide open as we get into the post-Christmas schedule and everything once we get into 2024. So maybe Seattle can put something together. There's still enough players there from last year's team that had the 100 points that, yes, if they get hot at the right time, they can do it. Speaking of hot, number 25, the hottest named team in the league, which would be the Calgary Flames, they stay in the same spot as last week. So they have the loss tonight against LA. They had a few wins going into that. For Calgary, I do think that's the right spot. Let me just adjust the board a little bit there. I do think that's the right spot for Calgary. We'll see whether or not that changes once we, again, get into the new year and everything. But yeah, 25. So there's the bottom row. There's the row that gets all the coal, right? Or do you give them coal, or do kids know what coal is anymore? Or is it just like this lost art? This idea is just gone. Number 24, dropping one spot from last week, is Montreal. Montreal's staying in the hunt. I'm not saying the Montreal's playing badly here. They were passed by a team this week, so that's why they're 24 instead of 23. Otherwise, they would have stayed in the same spot as last week. But yeah, Montreal down one spot. They're not likely to make the playoffs, but they're staying close enough to at least make Kent Hughes think about it. According to Elliot Friedman tonight, the teams with an extra goalie are asking for an arm and a leg for that extra goalie. I would imagine Montreal is one of them, and especially if it's a division rival coming calling. Why give them your goaltender at a discount? Make them pay for it. So we'll see how long Montreal carries three goaltenders, but there's lots of Jake Allen talk out there. He's still a Hab through the Christmas break, but we'll see how long he's a Hab after the Christmas break. All right, number 23, dropping 3 spots from last week, is St. Louis. St. Louis up and down. Now, they did get the win tonight against Chicago. Now, the one thing with that is they did need to come back from 5-2 down. Consistency in game has been an issue for St. Louis, and I think Drew Bannister's seeing that firsthand. But their record's better under Bannister than it was under Berube. Really, honestly, we've seen that virtually every team has turned it around under new coach. The only exception you could say right now might be Ottawa, but Jacques Martin's just getting started, so we'll see. But yeah, St. Louis just drops 3 spots from last week. Number 22, dropping 4 spots from last week, is Detroit. The inability to close out games is an issue for Detroit. And it is something that it feels like it's probably psychological, right? It's that we have this lead, and then as soon as the other team scores, well, that's when the dread sets in. Like, all right, well, now what? So yeah, it feels like that's where Detroit's at right now. And are they going to end up being a playoff team? Are they not? Your guess is as good as mine at this point. I think they have a good enough team to go for it. I think that Patrick Kane has started to help, but the results aren't there yet. So yeah. All right. Number 21, moving up 3 spots from last week, Minnesota. Strong weekend, beating Boston twice in 10 days. That helps. That definitely helps. And for Minnesota, they've had wins, enough wins lately that they're getting closer. Although their broadcast team did mention tonight that every time they win, it feels like the other teams they're chasing are winning as well. But Kaprizov's point totals have improved since John Hines took over. So yeah, I think Minnesota's in good shape. I don't know how many people can't keep a straight face because I'm dressed like Santa Claus, but I'm just gonna power through it because I can't hear you. So. At any rate, I can. The hockey guy this week, he's lost it. He's Santa Claus. Number 20, up 1 spot from last week, is Arizona. Now, Arizona, it's a 4-game winning streak they were on coming into tonight against Colorado. But, again, I looked at the opponents they were against and said, well, I don't know if I'm moving them up necessarily for 2 wins against San Jose. I do give them credit for not falling into traps in those games. Arizona's playing well enough that they could very well end up being a playoff team. Again, in the West, it feels like that second wildcard spot is pretty wide open, and maybe Arizona ends up getting it. But for my money at this point, I think 20 is the right spot. I know there'll be people who disagree. It's kind of how power rankings work. All right, number 19, moving up 3 spots from last week, is Pittsburgh. Now, Pittsburgh is still not in the top half of the board, so I'm still not seeing them necessarily as a playoff team at this point. But I do think there's some encouraging signs with Pittsburgh's play recently. Their goaltending's been good. And, I mean, tonight Raquel gets a goal. Now, they don't get the comeback victory over Ottawa, but they did come back in that one. And they're a little bit above 500. So, yeah, Pittsburgh moves up to 19th. I wouldn't be surprised if they move back next week. But, yeah, they're 19th this week. Number 18, dropping 6 spots from last week, is New Jersey. Now, they did bounce back with the win tonight against Detroit. But overall, it was not a fantastic week for the Devils, and so they take a bit of a drop. But the Devils are so up and down. It feels like New Jersey and Detroit are the teams to watch in the second half of the season. Either of those teams could get really hot and all of a sudden, look like a contender come playoff time. Both of them oddly enough, are in a position where their goaltending hasn't quite looked good enough. But while New Jersey's shopping for a goaltender, Detroit, once their goalies are healthy, they have an extra goaltender. But do they have a true bona fide starter in Detroit? Do they have a true bona fide starter in New Jersey? It's a question mark I have that keeps me from just saying, oh yeah, New Jersey, no problem. Which, of course, that was my Stanley Cup pick, so do I look foolish? Number 17, same spot as last week, and it's Edmonton. Edmonton, I was sure was going to move up, and the winning streak had them up here, but then they start losing again, so even though they had a couple wins at the end of the week, it basically just got them back up to 17th. So we will see in the coming week whether or not Edmonton is really and truly turning it around. Not really sure on that. I really wish I could say with certainty whether or not I have any faith in the Oilers at this point. Because, again, they can look great one night, and then the next night it's just sort of, it's not there. All right, so we move into the top half of the board. Number 16, moving up 3 spots from last week, is Tampa. Tampa is slowly getting it together. Tampa Bay, a team that we know will be scary come playoff time because of their experience, because of their star players, their goaltending, everything you're looking for in a contender is there. Questions about their depth remain, but of course you can try to move players around and fix your depth at the deadline. I do expect Tampa Bay to be one of the teams trying to fix their depth at the deadline. And yeah, so they're back in the top 2 rows at this point. Number 15, nosedive. Absolute nosedive, down 7 spots from last week, is Boston. Now, Boston has not been playing well for weeks. Boston has not looked good for a while. The goaltending was holding them in it, and now they're not scoring enough goals for the goaltending to help them. And the goaltending numbers are still good. They're not as good as they were. And the losses on back-to-back days, and just how they looked in those losses against Winnipeg and Minnesota, I have great concern. And so, yeah, it is a big drop for Boston this week. We'll see whether or not they jump back up next week. I don't think so. I really feel like for Boston, they probably overachieved early in the season, built up this great record, and it has kept them higher in the standings than I think they should be. And now we're starting to see with the loss against Minnesota, they got outshot badly. Against Winnipeg, they were outclassed from start to finish. So, yeah, it feels like Boston, the bubbles kind of burst. Number 14, moving up 1 spot from last week, Nashville. So the whole 3 teams I cheer for all in a row, those days are gone. Nashville occupies the 14th spot. I didn't punish them much for the last 13 seconds of today's game, but it did prevent them from moving up further than 14th. But yeah, Nashville looks like they're going to be a playoff team. And again, the wild card spots. You've got Arizona and Nashville potentially as the wild card teams. But you don't look at those rosters and say, what a great team top to bottom. So again, it feels like in the West, things are really wide open. This thing gets itchier and itchier the longer I wear it. And it hurts right in here. So that's going to be a great line on my face after. I'm not doing any videos after this. Good thing, because there'd be a lot of... I have questions about the line on his face. Where did that come from? But anyways, yeah, Nashville 14th. Forsberg's playing really well. Saros playing well too. And again, those last 13 seconds, it happens. If anything, it saved Dallas this week. Number 13, New York Islanders. So New York Islanders move up 3 spots from last week. I'm impressed with what the Islanders have been doing. The win in Carolina today, that was something, because that's not normally the way that the Islanders win games. Sorokin was good, and their offense was better. So if the Islanders are going to start scoring goals like that, they're going to be dangerous come the second half of the season. Horvat's heating up. Anders Lee has finally started getting some points and some goals too. So, yeah, the Islanders could really be a team to watch come the second half of the season. Number 12, and moving up 2 spots from last week, Washington. I have no idea how Washington does it week in and week out. I really don't. Tonight was another example where they get a point against Tampa Bay, and I watched that game enough to say, I don't know. It's a weird style that they play where there aren't very many shots. They don't get a lot, but now they've stopped giving up a lot of shots too. That third period tonight, there were only 8 shots altogether. But Washington's still winning enough games to stay in the hunt. I don't know. I don't know how that's working for them. Number 11, same spot as last week, Carolina. Carolina's had some iffy results up and down. They've won 3 of their last 11. And so, yeah, for Carolina, it is tough. So even though they did beat Vegas this week, the loss then at home against the Islanders, it means that they don't end up moving up this week. So For Carolina, they're still likely to be a playoff team, but isn't it fun that we have so many teams right now that might or might not be in the playoffs? There's no certainty. Usually by the time you get to Christmas, there's a lot of certainty with who's going to be in or who's going to be out. But this year it feels like there's a little more uncertainty, a little more unpredictability, and I like that. Number 10, moving down one spot from last week is Florida. So Florida's right near the top row. They're not far from the top row. They're not in the top row. I was impressed with them today. They've had some up and down moments, of course, but they're still a top 10 team in the league. And they're doing this while Reinhart's scoring perfectly fine. It's Tkachuk that has the 5 goals, which is still a surprise, but the fact they've got all these wins while Tkachuk has 5 goals is similar to the fact the Capitals have all these wins and points while Ovechkin has 6 goals. So at some point, you think Ovechkin's going to get hot. At some point, Tkachuk should start getting the puck in the back of the net, and then you're all set. Number 9 this week, dropping 2 spots from last week, Colorado. Now, Colorado had a good game tonight, and if they hadn't got that win over Arizona, Arizona would probably be 19th on the board, and I don't know if Colorado would be 9. I think I probably would have bumped them down below Florida today. But they did get that win against Arizona. It was a well-played game, pretty much from start to finish. Arizona had a good start, and then Colorado just took over. So the Avalanche, just outside that top row. I had said last week that if the Avs didn't pick it up, they could find themselves outside the top row, and there they are. But I do expect them to get back in the top row soon. Number 8, moving up 5 spots from last week, is Philadelphia. This is the first time Philadelphia has been in the top row in a while. And Philadelphia, that comeback last night against Detroit, that was impressive, and that's on the heels of all the other results they've been getting lately. Philadelphia's playing really, really solid hockey. And they're getting production from all over. Their defense has been quite good. They're not giving up chances. I think Philadelphia is a team to keep an eye on too. Couturier's been back to his normal self. Even though Atkinson's slowed down lately, they're getting goals from Farabee. Tippett's picked it up. And again, Sanheim probably having the best season of his career. So Philadelphia might be the best kept secret in the league right now. Number 7, moving up 3 spots from last week, Dallas. They get the win over Vancouver. They get the win over Nashville. Dallas is finding a way to get wins without Ottinger. So I'm impressed that they're still finding a way to get wins and points without Jake Ottinger. Wedgwood's been good. It doesn't feel like Matt Murray's going to get into a game soon. Like Wedgwood's played, I think it's 5 in a row. It's 3 or 5 in a row. I don't know what are numbers, what are days, what are years anymore. But yeah, for Dallas, they're back in the top row. We'll see if they're still there next week or not. But it's been impressive to watch them playing well without Jake Ottinger in the net. And these are points that they're going to be happy to get. Then Ottinger comes back and you're all set. Number 6, dropping 4 spots from last week, is the Vegas Golden Knights. So Vegas is going through what Carolina went through, what Florida went through. When you're a team based on one coast and you go to the other, and Vegas isn't technically on the coast, but you know, out west, and you're going over 3 time zones, it can be tough. And it feels like this year it's more of a case than it normally is. So I've got 3 days without hockey games. I need to look at this and see, you know, when these teams are going west and when Western teams are going east, is it really a matter of these road trips are tougher this year than normal? So I'd have to look in Hockey Reference and look through previous seasons as well. It's ambitious. We'll see whether or not that video happens. But at this point, Vegas drops. And I know that the fact that Patera's their goalie will be seen as the reason for some of their results, but they were starting to slide with Thompson in the net too. So we'll see. We'll see when Aiden Hill gets back and Thompson's back how things go for Vegas. They're obviously still going to be a playoff team, but it's been some slim pickings lately. Number 5, moving up 1 spot from last week, is Toronto. I was impressed with how they bounced back from that ridiculous loss against Buffalo, and they've been playing good hockey outside of that ridiculous loss to Buffalo. So for Toronto, they end up in the top 5 this week. We'll see what they do next week. But yeah, Matthews, tons of goals for Matthews right now. He looks like he could score 70 goals at this rate. I don't think he's going to end up with 70. He'll probably end up with probably around 60. I would say 60 goals is reasonable for Matthews at this point. But yeah, Austin Matthews playing some great hockey. The Toronto Maple Leafs, I think, a really solid team. And this is with Martin Jones in the net and Samsonov putting up poor numbers. They're still winning enough games that I've got them in the top 5. So if they figure out their goaltending, or if Woll comes back and looks as good as he did before the injury, this is a team that... All right, so number 4 on the board this week as we get into the top 4 is the LA Kings. So they dropped from number 1. There was a lot of ruckus with them being number 1 last week. I'm sure there'll be a ruckus over them dropping to number 4 this week. But I did feel like there were 3 teams in the NHL who are playing better than they are right now. The LA Kings, with their share of ups and downs over the last couple weeks, do I think they'll end up back in number 1 at some point? Probably. But this week, going into Christmas, they are number 4. So, number 3, same spot as last week, the New York Rangers. So the New York Rangers are number 3 on the board. They've had their share of good ups and downs too. The New York Rangers were number 1 a couple of weeks ago. Now they're number 3, so they're still playing well. I really have no complaints about the Rangers, and I think come playoff time they're absolutely a contender. I don't think they're going to be easy to defeat in the Stanley Cup playoffs this year. So, top 2. I think people know who the top 2 are. It's just a matter of in what order. So, what's interesting with this is there's 2 Canadian teams that are in the top 2. And I haven't seen a Canadian team win a Stanley Cup in a very long time. I'm old enough to remember a Canadian team winning a Stanley Cup. A lot of people watching these videos, according to my demographics, about half or more than half of the people watching have not seen a Stanley Cup come to Canada. Now, number 2 on the board is the Vancouver Canucks. They move up 3 spots from last week. So from 5 to 2, this is the highest they've been on a power rankings, I think, the whole time I've been doing them. I don't think the Canucks have ever been number 2. Impressive wins. They've got, I think it's a 9-game point streak going for them now. They're playing quite well. And so for Vancouver, I think they avoided the trap game tonight against San Jose. It wasn't their prettiest game, but they won it. And so with all the other wins they've had lately and a solid road trip, I mentioned Vegas having trouble with a road trip. Vancouver's been very good on their road trips back east, so I think that deserves mention as well, which means number 1 on the board for the first time, I think ever. I think it's the first time Winnipeg's ever been number 1. So they move up 3 spots from last week. The win over Boston was where I said, yeah, they're playing the best hockey in the league right now. Really, really smart scoring. Hellebuck's on top of his game. Their defensive game's very good. Clearly, Rick Bowness has the right game plan. He has the right game plan. It's working. And so the Winnipeg Jets are number 1 as we hit the Christmas break. So there you go. 1 through 32 for this week. Let me know your thoughts, as always, in the comment section below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you have not done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.